Good afternoon, everybody. I am excited to welcome you to the panel today as part of a new series of webinars between the World Green Economy Organization and the Clean Energy Business Council. So to quickly introduce myself, my name is Rachel Pineno, and I'm the Executive Director for the Global Compact Network of the UAE, which is hosted by one of the organizing partners of this webinar, the World Green Economy Organization. So just a little bit of background on the organization. It really seeks to promote the widespread acceptance and increased importance of green economy in the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication. And it intends to support emerging global actions towards the green, low carbon, climate resilient development model. I would also like to introduce our two other partners for this specific session, the Clean Energy Business Council, who is a non-profit, non-governmental association that brings together leading local and international organizations in the MENA clean energy sector from both the private and public spheres. So CEBC is a leading forum for local international corporations and government entities focused on the development and deployment of clean energy in the MENA region. And lastly, the EU GCC Clean Energy Technology Network, which aims to act as a catalyst and element of coordination for the development of cooperation on clean energy, including the related policy and technology aspects among various stakeholders in the UAE and in the EU, and GCC countries. So as we have our exciting panelists on the call on the session now, I would now like to introduce them. Our panel today will discuss the role of women in green economy and hopefully give our audience some insights on the benefit and role women can play as change agents. So our speakers on the panel today, we have Priya Sarma, Senior Sustainability Manager from UNILEVER. We also have Lamia Abdul Hakim, Head of Studies and Design and Head of the Feed and Tariff Central Unit for Renewable Energy Projects at the Egyptian Electricity Holding Company. And last but not least, we have Irina Kostova, researcher at the Center for European Policy Studies. So welcome, ladies. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Before we begin, I would like to ask our audience to please send through any questions you might have via the chat function, and we'll be sure to ask our panelists as we move through the conversation or at the end of the session today. So Priya, I would like to start with you. From your perspective and experience, how does gender equality and also women empowerment support sustainability and resilience?
Hi, Rachel, and good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for having me here. Because both sustainability and women empowerment are kind of topics both close to my heart, and they have immense focus within UNILEVER also. Essentially, just for those who may not know, at UNILEVER, our mission is really to make sustainable living commonplace. And we really aim to become a beacon for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, currently, we have a system that's very clearly not working. Yeah, there's no country in the world that has achieved gender parity. There are too many people who are being denied opportunities. They're being excluded, underrepresented, simply because of who they are. Yeah, so as an organization, we want to really help drive change by breaking down barriers and creating opportunities using our work scale and our workplace, using our brands with purpose and our scale through our supply chain and our distribution network. Yeah, we're one of the largest FMCGs in the world, and we really think we can make a difference. And we've kind of have shown that we've helped move the needle, and we are capable of kind of walking the talk. So in 2010, through the UNILEVER Sustainable Living Plan, we made a commitment and we put a target for ourselves to achieve a gender balanced organization by 2020. Yeah, and at that point in 2010, we had only about 38% of women in management roles. Yeah, and by 2019, we achieved our target of becoming a gender balanced organization, and that really happened a year in advance of our own commitments. Yeah, because we were supposed to achieve it by 2020. And the reason we've essentially done this is because we recognize that driving gender equality will not only help build a more fairer world, but it's also going to strengthen business and society. And the same principle really applies to gender equality and its impact on sustainability. So now it's well recognized that gender equality is really critical to achieving a wide range of objectives pertaining to sustainable development. From promoting economic growth and labor productivity to reducing poverty, addressing climate change impact, strengthening our resilience to disasters, and ensuring more peaceful and inclusive communities. Yeah. So women empowerment and gender equality is not just a question of human right. It's really crucial to achieve progress against all the SDGs. In fact, it's probably the one SDG that stems across all of them, and we have to achieve gender equality in order to ensure progress and achievement of the targets against the other SDGs. Now, very simply put, no country, community, or economy can achieve its full potential nor meet the challenges that we have today unless we have equal participation from all of the community. That means not just men and boys, but essentially also women and girls. Yeah. And by leaving them out or marginalizing them, essentially what we're doing is we are artificially restricting the pool where talent actually is likely to sit. Yeah. And by doing that, we are going to impede the development of new ideas, which is critical to entrepreneurial and economic diversification. And it's so important as drivers. So these, achieving entrepreneurial mindset, trying to achieve the solutions to all the climate change and poverty, inequality issues, you need to have the full population essentially involved. And UNDP analysis of the economic impact of investing in gender equality via not just education, because you have, for instance, in our region, you have a high level of women who are educated, but also ensuring the labor force participation, has found that interventions which will drive gender equality will contribute globally 3.6%. That's up to about 4.4 trillion USD, to the global GDP. And the highest impact actually on GDP is going to be found in our region, which is the Middle East and North Africa region, which will increase by up to 4.1%. So I think the business and the economic case is really very clear. And this is probably one of the SDGs we really, really need to focus on. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Priya. You kind of hit the nail on the head with those stats. It's very interesting. Thank you for sharing them. Irina, could you give us your thoughts on, I guess, the importance of could you give your thoughts on the importance of the role of women in driving inclusive economic growth?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, and great to be here in this panel. So maybe I will give my overview from the point of view, from a bit European Union's point of view, what is happening here in terms of gender mainstreaming and the promotion of gender equality. So of course, inclusive economic growth is receiving a lot of attention recently, and potential economic cost of filling gender gaps is something that is in the center of attention at the European Union. And the recent study, well, actually it was conducted a couple of years ago by the European Institute for Gender Equality, EU agency. So it estimates that improved gender equality would largely have a positive effect on GDP and on employment of women, and in general, increasing productive capacity in the entire economy. So to give you some figures, this study estimates that improving gender equality could lead to an increase in GDP per capita of between 6 to 9, even 10% by 2050, and that, in absolute terms, it would be quite a substantial number. So around from 2 to 3 trillion euros. So that's quite impressive numbers, and the potential impact of GDP also will vary across member states. And for example, maybe the most positive impact, the highest impact can be observed in some Eastern European member states and Southeastern, like Bulgaria, Greece, Poland, and Italy. So there, the impact can reach up to 20%, to 12%, sorry. And also this report identifies the key pressing areas for improvement, maybe in the European Union, and they are, of course, like I think it's everywhere in the world, it's STEM education and increase in labor market activity, and of course closing pay gaps and unpaid work. And closing gender gap in STEM sector could contribute to increase in GDP per capita around 2-3%. So it's also quite impressive and substantial. So, and of course, the issues are still persistent in the European Union, and currently we can name unpaid care work, and women are more exposed to it, and this is one of the remaining problems, persistent problems. Also part-time, that's no surprise that women are more involved in part-time jobs, so around 30% of women work part-time. In 2015, and only less than 10% of men did part-time jobs. So in this regards, of course, a pandemic, well, as everywhere else, hit unequally women, also because they are mostly employed in client-facing sectors, and they are more exposed to further unemployment under the current measures. And that is why all European institutes, so the European Parliament and the European Commission, they stress the importance of mainstreaming the gender, and this is a kind of a new policy which needs to be incorporated in all recovery plans, and for example, recovery and resilience plans, which should be elaborated and are being elaborated by member states, they all should take a very clear gender mainstreaming approach. And a court of auditors recently issued a report which states that it's essential to mainstream gender in EU budget, and it gives like a long list of recommendations how to perform it. And maybe just a closing remarks that indeed recovery package, next generation package, foresees a really substantial contribution to green and digital transition and recovery, so up to 37% to green transition and 20% to digital one. But it's also important to ensure that women will continue to increase their presence in these sectors, because well, a large part of financing goes to these sectors, and it's important to increase the participation of women so that they will not be left underrepresented in the future, to increasing again the gaps I was talking about. And also just the last conclusion about research and innovation funds. Before, of course, there were requirements for representations of women as part of like inclusion in projects and dissemination, but currently also EU funding programs operating gender considerations that go beyond the quotas and target real inclusion of women in all these projects. So maybe this is
Perfect. Thank you for that insight, Irina. Lamia, I would like to pass it over to you. So from your perspective, how can we work together to really support more women taking leadership roles in the area of green economy?
Hello, Rachel. Thank you for having me on this panel. Actually, I would like to share our success story in EETC. This is shows how can utilities and corporates work to achieve the inclusion of women. We have some governmental laws and regulations that forbids having some vacancy ads special for men regardless of women. By law, this is forbidden. For every vacancy, they can never say this is for men only. The other also important thing that men and women are equally paid for the same work and the same vacancy. This is by law in Egypt. For EETC, why did I say it's a success story? We have the first chairwoman in the Egyptian transmission company. To know the importance of this position, the transmission company owns and operates the grid for high and extra voltage all over the country. We have now the first chairwoman since 2019. We have 4 vice chairman ladies out of 5. We have large numbers of head sectors and general managers that are all over the country now. The internal pillars that led to this success of women inclusion. Number 1 is equal opportunities from the start for men and women. This begins at the start of working for fresh graduates. We ask the same qualifications for each vacancy, starting from the beginning of the career in EETC, and this goes around the whole work lifetime by asking the same qualifications for any vacancy up to the top management level, and all the candidates are evaluated in a fair way regardless of the gender, and the best candidate is chosen. This is guarantees that the woman has the full opportunity equally to men. The other pillar are the incentives are made for women. We have a paid birth leave for 3 months, unpaid maternity leave for 6 years for all the work lifetime. We have weekly 1-day leave for mothers who have babies under 2 years, and also we have the flexibility to work half time with half salary, and also we have a sort of preschool kindergarten for under school babies in the same building. This makes life easier for the young mothers. Last but not least, we owe the success of women to our managers and leaders who appreciated our works regardless of the gender. Also, we have at the stage of education, girls and boys have the same subjects and the same books to study all over the education time, and for engineers only. Since the first day in college, we are no more Miss or Mrs. We are engineers. Engineer, whatever the gender is. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lamia. It's amazing to see all the different initiatives that you have implemented across the wide scope of your organization. It's fantastic. So Priya, circling back to you and also around sort of the initiatives aspect, you talked about the fact that you had set this target and you obviously managed to succeed and reach that target before your actual deadline. Can you also give some insight on any other activities that UNILEVER has rolled out that really support and drive gender equality and women empowerment?
Sure, thanks, Rachel. So like I mentioned, diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important for us at UNILEVER, and it's not just a human rights issue. Yeah, it's not just about fairness. but we have a very strong business case because we feel that it can really help accelerate our growth. And the way we want to achieve this is by using our scale. Yeah, we've got more than 400 plus brands worldwide. Yeah, and all of our brands have a purpose. And these are brands that are used, I mean, almost or every day we have actually about 2.5 billion people using our brands. Yeah, we work across all categories from soaps to soups and a whole lot in between. So we feel using our brands, using our scale in terms of a supply chain distribution network, we can really drive a change. So I'm going to talk about maybe 2 initiatives that we've done. The first is a project that was initiated in 2000 in India, yeah, and this is called Project Shakti, yeah. Shakti means power, yeah, in Hindi, and this particular project has become Unilever's model for reaching out to our rural consumers who live on very low incomes in developing and emerging markets. So like I mentioned, this project was started in 2000 to enable women who lived in villages, were largely uneducated, not working, living in rural India villages, to nurture an entrepreneurial mindset amongst them and become financially independent. Now, we were not doing it out of the goodness of our heart, but the project was started because we wanted to be able to widen our distribution network and get our brands and products into the hinterland of India. And for anybody who might know India, it's one of the largest countries. It's very, very difficult to get a distribution network where you can access every part of India. And so that is why this project was started. And in an attempt to provide these women entrepreneurs who we call Shakti Amma, so Shakti means power, Amma is mother, yeah, with a regular income, they are actually trained by our Unilever sales team on the basic principles of distribution management. They are familiarized with our brands and also provided softer skills of communication and negotiation. And today, so in the last 21 years, there are about 120,000 such women micro entrepreneurs in India, yeah. And in addition to, or because these women have been able to generate an income by selling our products, what we have found is that, number one, the average income of a Shakti household increases by approximately 20% as compared to the average household in that same geography. Secondly, as a result of achieving financial independence, these women have reported more participation and their opinion has been sought in both household as well as village decision making. And this has automatically boosted their sense of self-confidence and self-respect, because earlier on, you know, these were just the silent operators in their house. Given the fact that they did not bring in any income, they were never referred to, or their opinion was never asked by either the the father or the head of the household, which is usually a man. Secondly, what we have also found is that when women tend to earn money, they tend to put it back within their households and their communities to help bring up their children better. So what these women have been able to do with this household, with this additional, or with this income, not additional because they were never working earlier, is to be able to, they are able now to buy more nutritious food for their children, and it helps them fulfill their own wishes. Yeah, and more importantly, these women also become our advocates for communicating all the hygiene practices that many of our brands like Domestos, which their purpose is all about bringing about sanitation in toilets, Lifebuoy, which is into hand washing, Signal, oral hygiene. They help communicate this further in their own villages. And we now have this project in many, many other countries, including Pakistan, I think Sri Lanka, and we've also introduced it in 2013 in Egypt. I don't know, Lamia might have heard of it. This is called Project Zainab. And it's, it's being operated in Upper Egypt, where the team also is working with a third party called Fabri, and they also help provide credit to these women. So that's one project that we have done and replicated in many markets. There's another project, and I was talking about our 400 plus brands. In 2016, the UN Women actually launched a platform called the Unstereotype Alliance. This was done in partnership with UNILEVER, which was one of many other companies, but we were the founding members. And the reason the Unstereotype Alliance was launched was based on a study that UNILEVER had done with Kantar, and which effectively showed that Unilever's, our consumers effectively were telling us, we don't see ourselves in your advertising. We don't know who you're talking about. You're talking about this one-dimensional woman, yeah, who is only a housewife. But as women, we are multidimensional. I might be a housewife, I'm a mother, you know, I'm somebody's wife, but I'm also a poet, I'm an adventurer, I'm a sports person. So effectively what we were finding is that women are not relating to our advertising. So working with UN Women and many other partners, in 2016, the Unstereotype Alliance was launched. And the Unstereotype Alliance is basically a platform. It's a thought and action platform that seeks to eradicate harmful gender-based stereotypes in all kinds of media and advertising. And this is very important because advertising is seen not just as a mirror to what or to reflect how society sees itself, but very clearly it's being found that advertising can also influence our thought process. Yeah. So essentially that's what the Unstereotype Alliance does. And we actually launched the UAE chapter with UN Women in November 2019. So we are one of the 6 chapters, country chapters globally, and there are many more that are going to come up. But we are, of course, given the fact that we're very new, we're still in the process of developing our strategy. But what we really aim to do is drive increased women empowerment and gender balance within organizations that are becoming members of the Unstereotype Alliance, but also ensure that over a period of time, we start moving the needle on how advertising and media is going to reflect society, and especially women, to ensure that we are providing great examples for younger girls. So that's it for me. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Priya. It's fantastic. It's very clear that, you know, Unilever has prioritized women empowerment, diversity, inclusion. And like you said, it's important that this becomes part of the business case and part of the strategy. And it's also great to see that you have taken those initiatives and replicated them around the world. It's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. I would like to end the series of questions by asking you all the same question. And first of all, I'd like to start with Irina. So throughout your individual career, what have been the challenges that you have faced as you have progressed throughout it?
Well, yeah, Rachel, quite a tough question. And before, during preparation for this webinar, I was thinking about the patterns that I encountered as a woman during maybe my career. And just to note, I come from I come from the energy sector / political science, so kind of a disciplinary background. So maybe one of the things that I encountered often is a kind of still persistent, and I'm speaking about Europe, wider Europe now, and in Europe also still persistent male-centered credibility. So often I faced that you need to actually, to mirror the widely accepted patterns of behavior, which I don't want to generalize that they are necessarily attributed to males, but often and in most cases they are associated with males. For example, assertive behavior, a bit more pushy one, and so on. So if you do not follow these patterns, and if you maybe assume a bit more feminine behavior, then you are not viewed as credible, especially when you end up like one or maybe one of two women in the room. So if you don't imitate the others in the room, you are just not taken serious. And then it's also a matter of age. The younger you are, the less you are taken seriously. That was also an issue. Then I think it's also like a kind of still persistent a bit of biases and maybe a bit of limitations for women regarding networking opportunities. And often, well, I think that man-to-man networking opportunities still remain wider, and often not all options are still viewed as a bit appropriate for women, and still there are kind of sometimes it happened also during my career. Sometimes you just cannot use some networking opportunities, some extra work activities that, especially when you work, I used to be with the one woman on the floor at one organization. So you have only male colleagues, and when they gather together to have a beer after work, it's not that often you can join them. And I experienced this, and you miss this opportunity, like to stay, like to expand your communication with them, also like after work. And I think that, well, yes, and still in Europe there is also a bit of sidelining, I would call it, and I don't want to generalize like it's men versus women, but still I also experienced a bit of sidelining in some, so some men prefer to, you know, to go for lunch with their peers, and that also like creates a bit of like a sense of a bit of inequality, and especially when you're in energy, when you're in gas sector, for example. And yes, that's definitely when you move to like a bit more renewables. And I'm really pleased that in Brussels, like even for last 4 years, the situation has been changing tremendously, and we really see a lot of improvements. And we have Brussels Binder movement, which actually says that women should be more represented in expert debates in Brussels, but also beyond Brussels, in Europe and well across the world. And actually, I see more women being invited for events, and it's really becoming like essential. If you have all male, especially all male all white male panels, then it's, well, the credibility of this panel is decreasing substantially, and this is one of the like very good signs that it's really good that it's in Brussels.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Irina.
thank you.
Thanks. Lamia, could I ask the same question to you?
I share with Irina that some challenges are met by women. I remember as a young engineer, I was a bit more sullen than now, just to prove that I'm serious, I'm a good engineer, those sorts of things. And it took me years to balance with that. I am proud of being a woman and successful also. But the challenge also I met, it was regardless of the gender, is to prove myself as a good engineer, to study more, to make more effort to prove myself in every position I was in there. And I think also this should be the main challenge, not to ignore our femininity. On the contrary, I say to the young ladies, be proud of yourself, be proud of the success you are doing. You are doing many parts in life. You are a housewife, you are a mother, you are a role model as a successful working woman. Even a successful housewife, this is also a story of success, because not all housewives are very successful. So I see this is the main challenge that you should concentrate on, of making yourself successful in every role you are doing.
Thanks, Lamia. That's great advice. Be proud of every role and every success that you have. Priya, could I ask you the same question, please?
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah. So I think I just have to start by saying that I feel I'm really lucky, to work at a company like Unilever, very values driven, very focused on sustainability. I really find my purpose resonates with that of Unilever. So I'm, and I completely understand where Irina and Lamia are coming from. I've seen it in other places, and I completely agree with Lamia. I think it's very important for women to understand they bring something else, and they need to hold on to those special skills that they bring in. Having said that, I think from my side, the key challenge that I've found is especially with regards to partnerships, and it's this whole approach of number one, this large focus on charity kind of CSR versus a focus on sustainability. So whenever we're looking for partners, a lot of the times it's about, oh, just give us the money, and it's like, no, we really want to, if we want to achieve our purpose, there's a lot of skills that we bring. We bring our network, we bring our brands, and there's a lot more that we can do. So I think that sometimes becomes a challenge, and especially when you're looking at a successful partnership, that aligned thinking is extremely important. So that's probably one. Another one is this focus a lot of times on short-term success versus long-term results. In many sectors, and I think Irina might agree now, in many areas, like for instance, energy, that gap is definitely reducing on account of costs. But again, there are, many other areas where the minute we start talking about sustainability, it always comes down to, but we've got to make so much of an investment. But and in a way, I see that as an opportunity, because this is something we always talk about. We always talk about the business case, and for us as an organization, we have actually seen our brands that have a purpose, they're growing much faster, almost 69% faster than our brands that don't have a purpose. We are seeing a great element of cost saving that we bring in through greater efficiency. Cost saving in terms of when we recycle our water, when we drive more sustainability initiatives in our manufacturing across our value chain, we're seeing the levels of saving that come in. So I think that mindset becomes very important. And it's very important that people understand that everybody, companies, individuals, everybody has to have a role to play. And that is why SDG 17 in terms of partnership is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think SDG 17 is the foundation to everything that we're working towards, to be honest. So I don't see any questions that have come through. Nope, there's no questions so far. Do any of you have any closing remarks that you would like to add to the conversation anymore? No?
I think maybe I just, adding to what Lamia had said early, I think especially if we have any women and men, this is a conversation many times that shouldn't be constrained, to just men, to women. It's very important that we have men as supporters and advocates to this whole thing. And yes, with regard to sustainability, I just want to tell everybody that each of us has a role to play, because I was in a panel discussion on circular economy the other day, and there were a lot of questions as to why do companies say that it is up to the individuals? And my only answer was, it's up to all of us. It's up to us as individuals. So long as we have a mindset, we will bring that mindset to play in every arena of our life. It might be at work, it might be at home. And these are lessons that we will pass on to the next generation, our children and everybody. So I think everybody really has a role to play. All of us have to be very aware of the issues that are out there and the fact that each of us can bring a solution.
Completely agree. And well said, Priya. Thank you for that. We have one question that has come through. Could the panelists comment, or could any of you comment on the impact of COVID on the drive towards equality and whether it has set back progress or even provided opportunities?
So again, I can do that, and that's merely because I've seen some information that has come through the UN, and COVID has had a big impact on women. Yeah, women have had to shoulder an excessive burden, both in terms of continuing to manage their work, but while doing it from home. So having to look at the same time, at their children, managing the house, doing the cooking, and it's really it's kind of increased the levels of poverty. So a lot of the advancement that we had made against the SDGs have been pulled back on account of COVID. So that's why you keep hearing about the whole building back better. There is a big impetus, a big push now by a lot of governments to actually refocus on sustainability and start rebuilding back. And in fact, there's been an increased amount of violence against women during COVID times, because people were cooped up in their house, stress levels had risen. And in fact, companies like ours, we've actually brought out specific policies to support violence. And again, it can be against any gender. But what we've essentially said is that the minute our offices reopen, anybody who wants to come back to office, irrespective of whether they are at that point of time, based on regulatory requirements, allowed to come back or not, we will allow them. No questions asked. That is just one of the things that we are saying with regards to our policy on violence against women. So I don't know if it helps answer the question, but yeah, there's a lot more work to be done to, reclaim the lost ground now.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. Lamia?
I have two opposite comments. The first one, that the government has taken a decision that mothers who have children under 12 last year and under 8 this year can stay at home with their full salary. But this is not the same for the private sector, who are suffering, as Priya said, from taking care of children while doing their work at home, and this is also a big challenge for them. And also the stress of the COVID-19 of both genders at homes may sometimes lead to some violence against women. That's why I think governments should have another look for working from home with the big influence on stresses on the families. That's why I share with Priya her thoughts on this issue. Thank you.
Irina, would you like to add anything to this question?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with other speakers. And as I already mentioned, post-recovery, so in Europe, we have this very catchy phrase, economic recovery and green transition. And of course, now the idea is that is being pushed by the European Parliament, and as I mentioned, the Court of Auditors made it explicit that the Commission should take more steps to ensure gender equality also during economic recovery. And of course, the same is happening in Europe. Many women already in part-time jobs, they lost their jobs, and many of them will move to part-time jobs maybe. And of course, the pressure of care work, unpaid care work is increasing pressure for women currently, and that is why, of course, it is important that plans that are elaborated by individual member states, they should take into account these aspects. And this is up to the Commission and to the Council actually to make, let's say, a bit of supervision on these plans, that they fully account this gender dimension of economic recovery, because it's not only about recovery from the pandemic, but it's also at the same time a transition to green economy. And this simultaneous activities, let's say. So they are very challenging to perform at the same time. Well, we need to do them at the same time, but it's very difficult, and that's why, of course, more supervision is needed to ensure that the role of women is taken into account.
Perfect, thank you. We've had another question. It's quite a long one, so bear with me. Could any of you comment on whether you believe quotas for women in senior positions will assist in promoting retention and promotion in, say, the energy sector? And what other incentives can be considered? Obviously, Engineer Lamia mentioned that there are on-site nurseries and opportunities for unpaid leave. So with that in mind, would quotas make or create more opportunity, or would they actually be a bit of a negative and create some pitfalls? Who would like to go first?
I can go first. I am against quotas. I always believe that I don't want to get a position as a favor from anybody or from any entity. I would like to earn any position for my qualifications, for my efforts, for my success in previous positions. So I think quota will maybe bring the wrong candidates that will be a bad image to women. I think it's better to search for a good qualification regardless of the gender.
Thanks, Lamia.
And I could, yeah, Rachel, I could probably just add, I'm not the energy sector, we are from the FMCG, but I agree with Lamia. Even at Unilever, you know, promotions and hiring is really based on performance and the promise of performance. Having said that, because there isn't a level of equality, in order to achieve that, you've got to put some other policies in place. So not quotas, definitely, because quotas are then there just to be filled in. But there are a lot of other policies that can be put in place to help support. So for instance, I remember Lamia mentioning, and we have this at Unilever, when you are hiring, the hiring manager, HR has to give the hiring manager equal number of CVs from both genders. Yeah. So this is called a balanced slate. And when the hiring manager decides to take let's say a man over the woman, yeah, he has to provide a strong reasoning as to why he is doing that. Yeah, it could be based on qualifications and all that is fine. And then you have to also ensure that if you are focusing on certain functions, for instance, in our company, there are certain functions where you get more male. Yeah, so for instance, supply chain, it's automatically where the men go. Yeah, or even customer development or sales. Yeah, we are then looking at these functions very specifically. We are ensuring that we are building the skill set of women so that when they get placed there, yeah, they are seen as being able to do the job. Yeah, and we've done this, for instance, I think almost 2-3 years ago in our factory in Egypt. We had the first factory manager I think her name was Lamia, and she was a girl, but there was a lot of work done at the back end when she was identified as a high performer. There was a lot of work done at the back end to ensure that she had the requisite qualifications to be able to do that job. Yeah, so quotas are probably not the correct way to go, but then you can have a host of other policies to ensure that you're meeting those requirements.
Yeah, I agree. Irina, would you like to add anything to that discussion?
Well, yeah, maybe a couple of comments regarding quota. Well, I would join other speakers. I would not like to be hired or promoted because I'm a woman and to fill in some quota. And I don't think that it really helps improve the situation. However, I think that yes, it's important, especially in the energy sector. It's important to take some measures, you know, to go out of this vicious cycle. So to facilitate greater participations of women. And I will give you one example. So I think that some informal incentives you know, changing the feeling of what is appropriate can be important and can help. And one example is about events in Brussels. Even like 4 years ago, it was totally appropriate if you have all male panel, all male discussants, and sometimes you can get like a woman as a moderator, you know, to tick the box, or you can get one female speaker just, well, you know, you invite because, well, you tick the box again. But like in recently 1-2 years ago, yeah, it's becoming increasingly uncomfortable and inappropriate to have all male panels, because this is not an excuse that you cannot find female experts. There are a lot of female experts who are equally qualified and equally professional, and you need just maybe to take a bit of time and to find them. And also these professionals should speak up and to be visible, more visible. And there are a lot of initiatives. I mentioned Brussels Binder, which actually promotes it and creates this sense of inappropriateness that you cannot have all male panel. But it's not obligatory, it's not in law, it's not in legislation. But you will not have a credible event if you invite only men in the field. Well, maybe in some cases this can be justified because of the topic or something, but there are very few topics where you cannot find female professionals in the end. And I think that these positive incentives, a bit of like peer pressure, can be really helpful.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I have one last question before I close. Could you give any advice for young women in either your specific sector or in general when they are starting out their careers and progressing throughout their career? What advice would you give to young women?
I mean, I can jump in here, Rachel. I think, again, we've been talking about, you know, the need for performance, which is probably the most important. And, you know, upskill yourself. It's really about upskilling yourself, being prepared for the future, what we're calling, you know, it's a change scenario post-COVID. There is a new future of work. There are new skills that are being required. Be aware of what is required out there. Continue to upskill yourself, you know, so that you're going to remain to be in demand. And I think most importantly, don't underestimate the power of what women bring to the workplace. Like, you know, Irina had mentioned, obviously in her sector, which is so dominated by males. Yeah, there is this requirement to be like a man, but you know, companies like Unilever, we are understanding the importance of diversity in thinking, because that is really what is required to bring in innovation. So we're very clear, we don't want our women to start acting like men. You know, that's not how it's going to work. And the only way you can be successful is if you bring your authentic self to work. Yeah. So be proud of, like Lamia said, be proud of who you are. You're a woman. Yeah. But continue to ensure that you are focusing on your performance, and that's the best bit.
Thanks, Priya. Lamia, Irina, would you like to add anything?
I only make it short. Don't worry about your gender. Concentrate on your performance, on your efforts, and be successful wherever you are.
Perfect. Short and sweet. Irina?
Well, yeah, I join like all wishers, and maybe two main points from my side. First of all, don't let stereotypes, persistent stereotypes in your country, in your region, in your closer inner circle just to upset you. So these stereotypes like women can have only family, you sacrifice family for career and all this stuff. Well, you can have it all, of course. There should be balancing, there should be trade-offs, but just don't let be upset by these stereotypes, which are still persistent. This is quite sad. And second, yes, just use opportunities, professional opportunities. Just don't give up and use any single professional opportunity you face, and try not to question a lot yourself. Women are usually more inclined to question their professional credibilities, and work hard and don't question yourself.
I wanted to add to Irina, she's correct. We tend to second guess ourselves too much. Don't do it.
Yes.
Just don't. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's the best advice that you can give to young women who are starting out or even currently in their career and second guessing themselves. So thank you all for your valuable contribution today. The conversation has been insightful and really fascinating to hear your different perspectives and journeys that you've all been on. I think it's clear that it's essential to involve women in consultation, project planning, and decision-making processes to expand the talent pool that companies can tap into as they really seek to accelerate diversification. And it's clear that governments and companies alike need to take bold actions to improve gender diversity in the workforce today. And it can't just be talk, but there needs to be a real commitment to action. So I hope this conversation has inspired you all, and I look forward to continuing this through various other dialogues and discussions. I'd like to thank our audience for attending, our panelists again for joining us, and our partner organizations. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.